phase of the Israel-Hamas war or new age when it comes to security threats and how countries as also organizations are going to handle this new way of attacking terrorists and terrorist organizations. To discuss all this and more when it comes to Israel's attacks on Hezbollah and Lebanon and the implications it could really have, I'm being joined by Tony Loughran, who is founder of an organization that deals with security analysis and security risks. It's called Zero Risk. Tony, thank you so much for joining us here on India Today.
You're welcome, Geeta. You're welcome.
Let's begin with what has really happened right now. We have seen instances, smaller cases of such operations being carried out. But how did Israel manage to do it in such a large scale? And how would you really define this? A new phase in the war, or this is the new age of security risks, threats that all of you who work in this sector really will have to look at?
Thank you. I think at the end of the day, this particular phase is an interesting one. I don't think it's a new phase. I think that Israel in particular has been doing these particular acts for so many years. I look back at 1982, the Shatila massacre, different other things that went on, and the retribution against the people that were involved in that was colossal. And you ended up with even Mossad planting explosive devices in diving cylinders for individuals who were going on leisure trips to actually detonate. Okay, so anywhere they can see a chance, anywhere they can get rid of the enemy, they will actually go in there quite hard. And what it is with Mossad in particular and Israel is the surveillance is incredible. They will do something for many years to actually kind of figure out just exactly where there's a fault or a flaw in that particular pattern, whether it's a human fault, whether it's a process fault, whether it's a transport fault, and they will exploit that to the hilt.
Okay, not the first time, but certainly the scale has been unimagined. So just tell us exactly from security perspective, from intelligence perspective, and operational perspective, how did Israel really?
The Israelis themselves obviously have been looking for quite a long time. They've been waiting to time this so they could actually kind of move in towards northern Lebanon as well, to start bringing back some of the actual population that were left behind there on the border. I've physically seen that 20 years ago when I was working in Tel Aviv. And the issue, to be honest with you, is it's a diversionary tactic, okay? But it's also a very clever one. Because at the end of the day, if you can take out the command and control of Hezbollah or of some of the actual organizations like this, it means at the end of the day that you can nullify exactly what's going to happen from a defense point of view when you start to strategically move your people into position. So that's exactly what they've done. And it's quite an incredible thing, actually, because what's happened is it's scared so many people now, because at the end of the day, everybody uses electronics, and it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's an iPad, an iPhone, a pager, even, which I might have to say, which I think is possibly going to go to the next phase, is a restaurant buzzer. So the vibrating buzzer that you've actually got in a restaurant. And that's where what happened was the technology from beepers, or pagers as we call it anyway, disappeared into that particular scene, because it was quite easy then for waitress staff, more of you, to have that buzzer rather than run around. And if you think about a table full of dignitaries that basically Israelis or anyone else for that matter want to get rid of, that's the way, that's the modus operandi, for instance.
Okay. Also, Tony, you said that the Hezbollah, in a certain way, with their own intelligence, which is also quite fantastic, knew that Israel is or has been working against them. Is this a massive intelligence failure, not just absolute humiliation for Lebanon, as it was for Iran when Ismail Haniyeh was assassinated on Iranian soil?
I think it is. I think that it started with the assassination of Fawad Shakir.
Yeah.
And what happened was the actual communications themselves have been kind of intercepted. And what happened was Fawad was told to go to the 7th floor of that particular building where he was assassinated by the Israelis. Now, what I think really, and I've been talking to various kind of people over the last 24 hours, and my opinion really is quite strong about this, if you've got an ultimate kind of organization like Hezbollah, Hamas, Fatah, anyone else that really wants to lock down their security, after that assassination of one of their own members, why they didn't actually start looking extensively on the electronic kind of counter surveillance and countermeasures as well, I am absolutely flabbergasted on, because no one's brought this point up yet. At the end of the day, thousands of devices are being sifted into the secure bubble that was Hezbollah. And that's including phone systems and pages, and even, I think, this restaurant buzzer side of it. And they've infiltrated the system, and that's it. They've walked into the back door, really.
Which is very interesting. It's not just about whether Lebanon and why was Lebanon not looking at this, but also the fact that in a very systematic manner, Tony, Israel and the countries that have been manufacturing and sending these kind of communication devices across to Lebanon have kept quiet about it. That they were okay that these were going to Lebanon. They knew exactly why Lebanon is procuring them, a one-way device or walkie-talkies in such large numbers. They were okay with it because there was some planned human intervention in that supply chain. Am I correct in understanding that?
No, I'm going to take that one further for you to try and explain. Okay.
Absolutely.
A lot of people kept on thinking to themselves, okay, did Mossad, did Israeli intelligence, did Israeli military as well intercept the actual factory where they were making the pages? Well, no, they didn't. Okay. I think what happened was the pages themselves and the devices themselves were continued to be made. And what you've actually got is a patsy scheme. Okay. Somebody else somewhere is actually operating on that supply chain and exporting on a regular basis. So this could have gone on for about 2 years. Okay. Make no bones about this. This is the planning that goes into these things. So the devices go out, okay, and it looks like a normal, legitimate kind of trade until the final moment when Hezbollah puts their order in for 2,800 pages and 4,000 of the actual walkie-talkies, okay? And all they do is they simply switch the battery, okay? And the battery itself then is cut in half, and half of that is the explosive, the other half is the battery, and they simply put that back together again, and then you have the actual device itself. Okay. So what I'm saying really is that I think the Israelis themselves are very clever and adept at this, and built all these devices and brought them back into mass containers, and they've been allowed to filter into the supply system, and that order then goes to Hezbollah or anyone else for that matter.
Tony, can I ask you to do that again? Explain to us, demonstrate exactly what you just said on how they do it.
So I think what happened was when Golden Pager in Taiwan decided that it wasn't them, okay, that they were the actual kind of the main company, that the holding company, I should say, that offers up franchises to the actual Budapest company, who people can't get hold of right now. That Budapest company would have been in existence for quite a few years. And what they would have done is they would have continued to trade on selling pages to restaurants, to hospitals, because they're very popular hospitals. And that was the cover story. So what happened was then Mossad or military intelligence would have hijacked that package, knowing full well that no one's going to turn a blind eye to this export trade going out. And they would have then had their own devices built on the models that are actually produced on a regular basis, and simply transferred over the actual supply chain, interfered with the supply chain, and put their own stuff in there, which had something like 3 grams to 6 grams of high military explosives. Okay, I don't know if you can see that there, but
yes, you'll have to put it in front of you because you have
yeah. So basically that 3 to 6 grams of high grade military explosives, and all that happens, it goes onto the back of the battery source in here on the Motorola. And what happens is the signal comes into here where the actual display is, and it simply detonates this in this Motorola, because you've got a battery source, you've got electronics, you've got everything here. So what happens is, Geeta, is this device here is filled with this inside. And what happens is a signal comes into here, okay, on the panel, and it blows from there. But what you see, if you look at this particular case of this mobile phone now, it's full of plastic, okay? So when it detonates, the sharp plastic here from the mobile phone is the accelerant and the thing that slices through the body. Okay, now if you look at the areas that were affected on the body with some of the actual people that were hit by the pager, it was mainly around the gut. Okay, and then from the gut itself, some of them were the pager that they brought up to their face where they were trying to physically look at it. And some of these people maybe couldn't see because they're actually physically impaired, trying to look at the message, and the device has gone off and blown their face completely from here and the hands.
Yes, the Iranian ambassador to Lebanon is a victim of the attack too. Interesting that he
Yes.
had a walkie-talkie in the first place, or a pager in the first. Um, uh, Interesting, very interesting breakdown of how it's done. Now, the second stage that I'd like to ask you, one is how it was assembled, what's used, and the signal. But you spoke of a signal. What signal are we talking about, and how is that signal transmitted?
Okay. So in devices, there would have been a small motherboard, very, very tiny motherboard that would have contained a code. And what's happened is the code itself has been sent by the Israelis, okay, from wherever at a very, very important time. And that code itself would have connected from a frequency point of view straight into the actual device. And from there,
One single code, Tony, for all the entire consignment, or each
absolutely,
of them are unique,
yes,
with unique code.
a unique code that would actually at least trigger, as we've seen, 2,800 devices.
They had
Okay.
2,800 unique codes that they activated just about the same time.
In the motherboard, they tried to do this, but if you look at some of the footage, there's been some small delays, and that may have been because at the end of the day that the battery strength on the device of the pager or whatever is weaker, so it can't actually push that particular signal through, or at the end of the day, there's a fault in the system of that device. But you looked at the fact is that majority of the people were injured, large scale injuries, 2,800, but they actually managed to get, I think, 16 of the main fighters of Hezbollah. And that is significant, really, because they were going on the odds system that at the end of the day, they will manage to get hold of quite a few people. But my concern, really, Geeta, is they would have had to have done their intelligence. And this is down to human intelligence about the people on the ground. And the reason why is Israel could have been in serious trouble if maybe 5 or 6 people would have traveled somewhere to catch a flight or somewhere to get in the vicinity of a large, population, and it was to go off then and cause international kind of furore, from that particular point of view. So Israel knew what they were doing.
Okay, I have to ask you about the implications of security, but before that, a very critical question that comes to mind is this, that every time we talk about Israel and we talk about the budgets that they have when it comes to securing themselves, the whole idea of right to defend themselves, but how they do it. In your assessment, Tony, how much of money, time, resources would be spent on a mission such as this one? Just
It would be
ballpark.
it would be colossal. It would richly go into millions and millions of dollars really pumped into here, because you've got operatives themselves who are still on salary. Come back to basics here. Okay, these people are doing a job and they're doing an incredible job, but they're still paid, and they're still paid overtime, and they're still paid for days to travel. They're still paid for out of hours where they're doing intelligence. You're looking at vehicles. You look at the kind of make of the devices. You look at the manufacturing processes, observations. I mean, I've run many surveillance missions, both within the media side of it, really, where we're doing some stories, but also in my former military days. And it is a long process. It's huge. You cannot turn around and say you will solve everything within 24 hours, 48 hours, or whatever. So the logistics that would have got into this would have been colossal. And I might add, okay, that they knew that the net effect was going to be huge. And it is.
That's just an incredible, incredible detailing of what Israel has really done. But again, we were talking about implications earlier before we started the conversation. What are the implications now? We've seen pagers, walkie talkies. Do the Israelis have the capability to take it to the next level, to take it to mobile phones? And does that mean now airport security, planes, how people or what people are allowed to carry is going to be a very, very different, which is why I said it's not just new face, but also new age.
It's a very interesting kind of point you make there, to be honest with you, because everyone's focusing on just exactly what's happening with these devices. And my immediate thought went to, oh my God, hang on a sec, because I had this big debate about the weaponization of the lithium battery, okay? Because no one's come yet and talked about the fact that it might have been military grade C4, small device, okay, very, very tiny, but maximum penetration. But what no one's really talked about is the huge potential to weaponize the lithium battery to create an explosive. Now that's a game changer. If that was to happen, and it's proven in this particular case that it did, okay, we've got a problem, because what you've got then, you've just not got Hezbollah, Hamas, or whatever doing their particular thing, but you've got criminal gangs overseas. You've actually got individuals themselves who would like to get their hands on it from a kind of a close quarter assassination point of view. You've got a potential assassination of politicians, and the list goes on, because it's an incredible kind of change in exactly what it's like as far as targeting is concerned. And that's my biggest concern right now, is that, what has gone on. And that's the concern.
But in that concern, what happens? How are governments going to look at which are the sectors that will be most impacted? And that's why I came to airport security and aeroplanes.
Absolutely. I think that the airport security side of it is an interesting one, because we started to see a huge spike after 9/11 of kind of different things to do with searching, triple search security all the way through to the airports, kind of swiping, so on and so forth. So you ended up with a kind of a huge, big kind of slow process to go through the airports. Now, what people don't realize, and your viewers may not realize this, is that for every single airport that you've actually got, the more security layers that you put in there, the more there's a chance of a delay, and there's more financial impact on the airlines themselves to turn these aircraft around, and especially if it's to do with freight in particular. So there is a financial and an economic knock-on right now, and I'm sure Lufthansa, for instance, Lufthansa actually kind of cancelled their airlines into the Middle East because of this particular threat. And what you've actually got is a knee-jerk to that. I actually think there's going to be a huge, big kind of discussion around this as well, as to what we can do to try and see if we can actually minimize the threat, but also to protect the airports and also the transportation systems that are so vital for supplies around various areas.
Also, working in the intelligence sector, Tony, before I let you go, how much do you think there would have been cooperation between Israel and the United States of America? They have actually come out and said officially that they were not aware, but there are reports that are suggesting that just before the attack, Israel did inform Washington.
I think that's inevitable. I think that at the end of the day, that Netanyahu himself and Joe Biden are playing a very, very interesting dance here. I mean, if you look at the actual kind of the situation really where Joe Biden actually kind of pushed back on Netanyahu and said, enough's enough. Okay, please stop, this thing with Israel. But there's an interesting thing here that's at play in the background, which not many people know about, is at the end of the day that the Americans themselves have got, incredible weapons programs. Some of the weapons programs have never been tested in certain places. And I'm sure at the end of the day that the Israelis are quite happy to have that particular kind of agreement to look at what is the future of certain weapons. And we've seen it in Lebanon over the years as well, where some weapons are actually being used to literally suck the buildings out from the front, so you can see in the back of the building from an intelligence point. And they're called hypersonic bombs, which at the end of the day, not many people have talked about. So technology has moved on a huge, from the very earlier days anyway. So politically, everybody is intertwined, from this point of view. And the interesting thing for me is Iran. Okay, everybody keeps saying, when's Iran going to join in? When's it going to happen? And so on and so forth. But I actually see Iran as an agitator. They're very much a kind of a prod the bear in certain places. Okay, fund the Houthis in Yemen, fund the actual Hezbollah, fund Hamas, and let's see just exactly what result we can get really with regards to aggression against Israel. So I think at the end of the day, there's a very, very different dynamic going on there.
Okay, finally, Tony, um, what Israel planned this attack and must be prepared for any kind of retaliation. For now, it does seem like the communication links for Hezbollah is absolutely decimated, and they will take some time to recover. But have they factored in the responses that would come from the region for Israel? The threats are massive.
Can I just actually correct? Can I just talk about the actual communication side of it?
Absolutely.
Hezbollah will survive, Geeta. They will do an incredible job. Okay, they've been resilient all the way through for many, many years. Now, I think what they'll do is they'll revert back to the Bin Laden style situation and Zakahiri as well. They survived on for a very good reason, because at the end of the day, they didn't rely on technology. They relied on the mule. They relied on the hand-to-hand device hand-to-hand messages that were going past everybody. So at the end of the day, they could not be tracked. They could not be exploited. They could not be killed. And I think that's exactly what Hezbollah and other organizations are doing right now. Make no bones about it. It's not just Hezbollah. It's all the other organizations are looking at just exactly what that capability was like and thinking about their own particular technology chain that was coming through.
All the phones really at bay over here, pages, walkie-talkies. I'm sure they're just staying away from all sorts of technology right now. So,
I look. The thing is that what happened is that is a sad thing in some respects. The funeral processions that were going on, they told everybody, please get rid of all your mobiles, get rid of
they did?
your pages. They did. Hezbollah came out and said, bury technology. That was their main particular thing. But what you've got is you've got old school in some of the organizations that say, no, it's not going to affect me. Away you go. So at that particular point, I find this incredulous because given they've had a second warning, so it's the third strike and you're out. Still, people were carrying around devices that had explosives in them. Why they couldn't have actually dismantled, why they couldn't have checked it, why they couldn't have scanned it or whatever, I don't know. But I think at the end of the day, tunnel vision sometimes, is the order of the day, and people don't think it's going to happen to them, but it did. So it's a real shock.
Tony Loughran, thank you so much for joining us here on India Today Global.